So this is Humans Are Hard, Code is Easy. Here's a string of thoughts that ran across my mind early in my programming career. Why can't people just leave me alone and I can do my work? Why don't people understand me? I think it must be they're just dumb. They don't recognize genius when they see it. Perhaps you've been there too, a frustrated developer who feels like they know enough. However, the success you thought you'd have is out of reach. You see others who make better strides, but why? Is it a skills gap? I want to share with you how I learned about my skills gap. Java, check. Linux, check. SQL, check. Humans, what? Humans are hard. Code is easy. So I focused on the technology. One of my first mentors was a database administrator named Doyle. He really knew his stuff, but didn't say much. That can make learning challenging. One thing Doyle would do is fix the problem for me. He would fix it so quickly and then leave. What did you do? He was already gone. Working with Doyle gave me some insight. Technical people hate explaining basic stuff. Ask them a simple question and they will flip the bozo bit on you. What is the bozo bit, you say? A few years after working with Doyle, I worked with a software architect named Corey. He had many interesting observations. One thing Corey would do, if you asked him a stupid question, one that you probably could have answered by doing some basic research on your own, he wouldn't answer your question or work with you. That is the bozo bit. Bozo, of course, referring to Bozo the Clown, bit in reference to computer bit or binary storage. Corey was pretty extreme, but many developers can be that way. To gain respect from those developers, we need to know the technology. Humans are hard, code is easy. So I focused on the coding. I learned new technologies. I tried to keep my head down and avoid getting the bozo bit flipped on me. A few years later, I transitioned into a new job, technical lead. One year during my annual evaluation, my leader shared with me, Tom, we think you have solid credentials. Coding skills got you the job, but we need you to develop other skills. My leader shared with me where I was failing. Delegation. He shared how I wasn't delegating work to my teammates. Case in point, there was an upgrade that needed to be done. I did the work in 10 minutes or so. To explain that to some of my teammates would have taken twice that amount of time or more. Another trap I fell into with delegation is the belief in our value. We can convince ourselves that we are worth more when others can't do the same work as us. I remember working with Jamie the first time. I wasn't quite sure he understood what we were doing. He was always done quickly. Then I finally asked him. Here he had created a script to deploy changes and update dependencies. I was doing this all manually. I was worried about delegation and the people I worked with had better ideas. Perhaps I didn't know everything I thought I did. A few years later, I got to work with a leader named John. We knew each other through a mutual friend. I had begun to coach individuals and teams. John wanted an outside resource to help him change his team's mindset. He shared how most IT people work with others in a transactional fashion. We get the requirements and we solve the issue. John said, Tom, my team is like bank tellers. They get asked to fix something and they do. I want my team to be like financial planners. A financial planner builds relationships. Then they can anticipate needs. So you're saying, John, you want your team to have better relationships with their customers? John said, Tom, if my team has better relationships, they will develop empathy and understanding. Relationships? Understanding and empathy? Huh? That won't work. That's what I thought at the time, but I was wrong. John knew his team wasn't as understanding and as empathetic as he'd hoped they'd be. He began requiring them to talk to the community directors when they traveled. These conversations helped them begin to build relationships. Instead of just fixing the problem, they fostered relationships too. Each little change John made helped his team understand the community directors had many things on their plate. John proved me wrong. He overcame his deficit by being curious and empathetic. He was able to change the way his team interacted with the organization, and he became more influential in the organization, so much so that he has since been given additional responsibilities. From bank tellers to financial planners, he remade the image of his IT team. This brings me to my main idea. Coding skills got you the job. Influence will get you the career. Coding skills got you the job. Influence will get you the career. What do I mean? Developers are focusing on technology skills only. If we truly want to set ourselves apart, we need to know how to influence and collaborate with teams. Gone are the days when we could just send in requirements with pizza and out pops code. Organizations are looking for more from their developers. The problem, my problem, was I was terrible at relationships. I had confirmation. I had proof. Although I didn't start out as a developer, though. My first stop in my professional career was quite different. It seems like just yesterday, I started in my first job out of college. I started at Wallace. What is Wallace, you say? We sold business forms and office supplies in Des Moines, Iowa, kind of like Dunder Mifflin. Armed with a business management degree as I left college and no real idea, I had 3 job options. I could sell insurance, or I could sell life insurance, or I could sell business forms. So I did what any sane person would do. I sold business forms. Who wants to call on our friends' parents for insurance anyways? Did I mention that Des Moines, Iowa is the insurance capital of the world? Back to my first day at Wallace. Can you believe I had to make a few cold calls before lunch? Let me remind you that in college, the only time I called my friends was when we were having a kegger. Getting people to buy business forms is a bit more difficult than getting college students to drink beer. Now, I really didn't want to make those calls, but lunch was getting close. I was given 3 prospects from another sales representative to call on. Hello, is Mike Huff available? Oh, tell him Tom Henriksen called. I'm from Wallace. Click. Whew. Oh, one down. Hello, is this Mr. Hegna? Oh, Mr. Hegna, how are you? This is Tom Henriksen, your new Wallace representative. Oh, I apologize, Mr. Hegna. I apologize if our labels fell off your click. Whoops. I guess we got disconnected there. All right, one more and we can go to lunch. What? Do we call on gentlemen's clubs? My coworkers all die laughing. Turns out this is their way of initiating new sales representatives. Similar to Tommy Boy, my sales techniques were not appreciated. Soon after my first day in sales, I started to realize this wasn't going anywhere. Lucky for me, a friend from high school had reached out and shared with me the opportunity in technology. So I began to pursue a different degree and head in a new path. I left my job in sales and started working as a developer. Now, working as a developer is quite a bit different than working in sales. The sales office I worked in was always full of people. They would be talking on the phones to customers or talking to each other. The developers I started to work with were a quiet bunch on the whole. Friday afternoon in the sales office, the newest rep had to get beer for everyone. Friday afternoon with the developers was, well, quiet, just like the rest of the week. Now, perhaps it's starting to sound like I didn't want to make this change, but I slowly began to realize I was more Spock than Jimmy Fallon. The quiet, contemplative work of a developer suited me more. So as I began my work as a developer, I started working in a lot of different technologies. And I started to hear a lot of buzz around the Java language. So I began to read through tutorials and work through programs in my free time on nights and weekends. All this work paid off a few months later when a company leader came to me and said, "Tom, would you be able to help Dave with a new application?" Turned out they needed someone who could write an application using Java. I, of course, agreed. Like Luke beginning to use the Force, I was starting with some basics. As my Java skills, I began to learn more about Java and others. I learned a few other things too. I began working with someone who was quite sharp from a technical perspective. Although you might say Eric was a complete jerk sometimes because he would yell at people he worked with. And the managers and the team put up with this in a large part because Eric was so productive. I can still see it now. Now, Eric was a smoker, and he was trying to quit, which made Eric even more testy. Eric and Sri were working together on some files, and I came walking down a row of cubes, and I saw Eric in Sri's cube yelling. You know how people get mad and their veins look like they're going to pop out of their head? Eric's veins were about ready to explode. Then he ran out the door. I guess he needed to smoke. I went to Sri's cube and said, "Sri, are you okay?" He turned to me and said, "Yeah, Tom, I'm fine, but no one should have to put up with him." Sri couldn't have been more correct. Eric was a tyrant who ran around like Darth Vader, intimidating everyone. We all put up with it, and just because developers might act like Spock doesn't mean we don't have feelings too. I would like to tell you that Eric was let go and the team was able to move on. Eric wasn't let go. The company did nothing to him. And that was hard for the whole team, but we had to work through it. Now, Eric wasn't a team player, and he was out for himself. But you might work with someone like Eric, or perhaps a nice version, and they might take all the tough work for others. But that can make it easier for the group, but it can stunt the overall growth of the group. If you work with a coding hero and they take vacation, things can fall apart. Let me tell you a story about another leader who dealt with a similar issue. Ben was a leader I worked with, and he had a coding hero on his team. We'll call him Dave. Dave would code solutions that were more complex than others could understand. Dave was coming up on a milestone birthday, and he took 3 weeks off. He was going to bicycle across multiple states with all his gear. Now, Ben knew this was going to be an issue. So Ben met with the team, and they discussed the challenges. The team decided to have knowledge transfer sessions with Dave. Ben helped foster this collaboration. This helped the team slowly chip away at the knowledge gap. It also enabled the team to become more resilient. Mastery for Luke Skywalker came after a battle with Darth Vader. Programmers have small battles each day. As Stephen Pressfield says, the amateur tweets, the pro works. Professional programmers show up every day and slay small demons. Now, the first skill I had to master as a developer was debugging. Of course, applications today have many tools. The first application I had to debug many years ago, I was armed with print statements in a log file. Quite primitive by today's standards. Let's see, where is that value being set? All right, let me add a print statement, recompile. Oh, compile error. Let me add that, update that, run the report, tail the log. Oh, the database. I forgot to update the database. All right, let me update that. recompile, run report. Now that looks better. Of course, debugging is so much easier today, but we still have to use the old bean. It's important for us to learn the types of mistakes we make. As Stephen McConnell points out in his book, Code Complete, we need to learn the common mistakes we make. I can still hear my coworker Ken laughing at me when I would forget to initialize my variables. I did this a lot in my early Java career. Of course, developers today like to impress each other. I had to use the singleton pattern to fix that. There are many esoteric topics we can talk about for hours. In Essentialism, the Disciplined Pursuit of Less, Greg McKeown talks about the importance of editing to journalism. He describes how important the journalists are in bringing the stories and the ideas, but the editor does the important part. They have to review the piece and rework it. Over my years as a developer, I have mentored many junior developers. One in particular sticks out. He began to read about code basics, and he would add unnecessary code from time to time. I remember he was having an issue with his application, and we began debugging an app he had. And I remember looking at his code, and I saw a loop, and I asked him, I said, "Why is that loop here?" He looked at me unsure and said, "I don't know, I thought it would help." He thought it would help. Once we removed his unnecessary loop, we resolved his error. Adding code is easy. Knowing what to keep is hard. It's not that I'm saying computer science basics are not important. We need to master these too. However, if we put our sole focus on them, though, our careers will falter. We spoke before about Eric. He had mastered computer science basics. However, his teammates couldn't stand him. We need to be good at our work and get along with our team. If we do just one of these, we aren't doing our job. As I learned more soft skills, my career progressed, as starting out from a developer, then to senior developer. Then I moved into a technical lead role, and then into manager of software development. I can still remember it now. When I close my eyes, it was a Friday morning in May. I came into the office at my normal time, a little after 8 a.m. I had dropped off the kids at school and came into the office. Although the odd thing was, my boss was in. My boss usually came in at 9 or after. Anyways, I sat down and unpacked my things. As I was sitting at my desk, my boss, Scott, came to me and said, "Tom, can I talk with you?" I said, "Sure," and I followed him to his office. Although when we came to his office door, he took a right instead. That's strange, as I followed Scott down the hallway. And then he took a left into Sandy's office. Who is Sandy, you ask? Well, she was the director of human resources. I knew something was up then. Scott and I sat down. And then Scott said, "Tom, this is your last day here." If you've ever heard that said to you at work or in a relationship, you know exactly what it feels like. The rest was strange as I felt a calm come over me. I knew something was going to happen. Although I could tell Scott and Sandy felt terrible. They discussed the next things. I packed my belongings and left. Getting fired gives us a good chance to reflect. What did we do wrong? How could this have been avoided? As I look back, I realized one lesson first. What led to this was a lack of clarity. I did not clearly understand an objective. Therefore, the team I led didn't execute accordingly. Processing this, though, can take time. We can get frustrated and want to blame others. However, we need to own our mistakes. The second lesson I learned was the importance of relationship management. As John taught us earlier, we need to continually foster those connections. I began to reach out to my network and the opportunities were plentiful. So even something as challenging as getting fired can be a time full of learning. We just need to take the time to unpack it. Mastering basic skills requires guidance. Early in my career, I worked with a software developer named Wei. He instilled in me a systemic approach that I still use today. He taught me how software development is essentially problem solving. Wei began to notice that oftentimes I was trying to solve 5 different things at once. Wei's guidance was brought clear to me a few years later when I attended a seminar. At Michael Hyatt's Best Year Ever conference, he discussed goal setting. Michael said, "Detailed plans are great if you're building a nuclear submarine. For everything else, just focus on the next step." Wei and Michael agreed on this point. Don't overthink it. As Luke Skywalker first encountered Obi-Wan Kenobi, where he learned some basics, similar to what I learned from Wei. Luke kept learning, and so have I. Reflection doesn't come easy for me. I want to charge on to the next thing. In David Marquis' book, Leadership is Language, he talks about the importance of red work, the doing, and blue work, the thinking. In the book, he walks us through an example about how they both are important in making progress. He uses the Industrial Revolution as an example where the managers did the blue work and the workers did the red work. However, today, knowledge workers must do both. We need to reflect frequently. Take a step back and reflect on how we are doing. How can I improve my coding, debugging, and testing? By now, you're probably thinking, Tom, I'm a software developer. I don't need no stinking soft skills. Of course, if you don't want your career to improve, keep on keeping on. My career path has changed dramatically as I've realized the importance of communication, relationships, and influence. Let's explore 3 core soft skills. These will set the stage for a career transformation. So remember, coding skills got you the job. Influence will get you the career. Number 1, communication. Listen to what is being said. Ask good questions and seek clarity. Developers who do this write better code. In the book, The Pragmatic Programmer, Andy Hunt and Dave Thomas talk about the importance of digging for requirements. We need to look between the lines. Part of communication is knowing your message. Many times in my career, I've just started to open my mouth and just started talking. Know what you want to say and say it. Number 2 of the 3 core soft skills is influence. In the book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, Dale Carnegie talks about the importance of talking in terms of the other person's interest. Early in my software development career, I tried to convince a corporate vice president that we needed to use a new technology. He wasn't interested at all. However, the next time I spoke to a similar level leader, I aligned a technical change with a corporate objective. The outcome of that conversation was quite different. Number 3 of the 3 core soft skills is leading change. When we want to lead a change, we need to share the vision. A few years ago, I got to work with a sharp product owner named Nakia. We began working together on a team that developed an application for customer service representatives. Nakia began to notice the team wasn't really understanding the true vision. That's when Nakia had an epiphany. She realized we needed a field trip. Nakia had the entire team spend a day with the customer service representatives. We listened to the calls they were taking. We saw them struggle with the existing application. That's when the team was ready to go. We came back the next day energized and with a clear understanding. Nakia was able to connect and share the vision with the team, leading a true change in the organization. These 3 core soft skills can help change your career direction. Let me share a story how I use them myself. In my first role as a manager, I tried to get to know the team. This can help build trust and influence with them. Perhaps you're thinking, Tom, these won't work for me. Let me tell you a story about AJ. His path was a rocky one. AJ was a strong developer, but he rarely talked. He worked in a slow, methodical fashion and always kept his emotions in check. Over time, his teammates became irritated with his style. I tried to get to know him. We connected on a few things. For instance, AJ traveled to Germany to pick up his new BMW. He was quite excited about that. Still, his unwillingness to communicate with the team and especially the product owner were wearing thin. That's when my boss came to me and said, Tom, it is time for AJ to decide if he wants to be part of the team. My boss asked me to put AJ on a PIP, or performance improvement plan. I had 60 days to help him improve, or else. When I met with AJ and explained the situation, he got very angry and began yelling at me and stormed out of the meeting. The first 2 weeks after that incident were really shaky. I kept checking in on AJ daily, but he wouldn't talk to me or anyone. I knew he was an introvert and he needed his space and time. Eventually, AJ and I sat down and AJ explained how the PIP made him feel. I got AJ to agree to try some experiments. We met as a team and crafted some working agreements. These spelled out everyone's role and how we would collaborate. I got the product owner to give AJ one final shot. In the end, we were able to give AJ the space he needed. He was able to develop the soft skills he needed to change his career direction. Through coaching him and his teammates, we worked through it. AJ was able to stay and really come into himself. By using these 3 core soft skills, I was able to lead and communicate and influence with the team using the 3 core soft skills. I learned how to help AJ, myself, and others. You can do this too. Coding is important, but it's not enough. We can keep our head down and bozo it through our career, but that won't get us where we want to go. Relationships matter. Communication matters. Influence matters. Practicing these soft skills can lead to more influence, which leads to more success. People seeking out your opinion as an expert. Managers choosing you for the most exciting projects. Practicing soft skills is how you code the future of your dreams.